and I wanted to discredit what you were saying. Right? I'm going to be honest with you, but the more I listened, the more I'm like, I get why people are listening in, especially when I heard you say, I'm not talking to everyone, I'm talking to myself. All right, now I get why everyone in the world of superficial crap that is social media, there's this vein of authenticity and rawness that is resonating with people, and it's coming from your mouth. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. I'm sitting here with Nick Pollard. Nick, I said to you, hey, I got things to say to you, but I don't want to. I want to make sure we do it on while we're recording.
Well,
So this is
I
what I want to say to
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, I listened to an episode, and I apologize to whoever the podcast host was. You know, I always do some research
Sure.
before I jump on here, and most of the time I can hear somebody's story, and it could be about alcohol. I actually reached out to you because I've been sober for 5 years, and I heard you talk about ADD or ADHD or if you want to call it, and I
Sure.
saw some similarities. But this episode that I listened to, man, it hit me a little different, and I'm going to be honest, I'm nervous about this episode because God, I almost feel like I'm going into a hard therapy session because so much what you said resonated with me on
Sure.
my drive home. That usually I can distance myself as the host of the podcast, as the president of Consequence of Habit. But this one, man, I feel like I'm going to be seen, and it might get a little uncomfortable, but that's what we're here to do. So actually, I want to make sure we give this guy credit. The podcast, it was a Mankind podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Man, that was one of my favorite ones I ever got to do.
It's fantastic. Fantastic. The host knew when to let you talk
Yeah.
and then knew the right question to ask. And to be honest with you, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for this guy. What you were saying was hitting him too. Matter of fact, you said something about needing to make a change or what to do, and actually, I think you labeled people pleasers as liars, and he goes, how do I change it, or how do we change it? But it was the way he said it.
Sure.
100%, there could have been no one else in the world but the two of you talking, and he wasn't asking as a podcast host, right? He was asking
Right.
like, man, I want to know. All
I
right.
got a I got a real sense of him, by the way, when that podcast aired and when we were recording it. I got a real sense of him as a human. And dude, that's a really powerful guy. Like, just really honest, really authentic, and genuine, and really wanted to know how to help people. And I really appreciate the Mankind Project a lot. I think they do a lot of good shit for men. And I've never done any of their work, but I hear nothing but good things.
Right.
So they could be one could be one of these organizations that's out, like, boot camping dudes and kicking them in the nuts and telling them how to be manly or whatever. But I don't.
Right.
But no, that was one of my favorite. That one, and I did one with a guy called the Spiritual Gangster, or no, the EQ Gangster. That was a really good one. I enjoyed that one too. So
EQ Gangster. I
he's a,
like the title.
he's really funny. I've done a fair amount of pretty fun podcasts. I was pretty excited about you guys though.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I mean, full transparency, I didn't finish it by the time I got home. I mean, I listened to it for a while. It was a long podcast, but there was a lot of moments in there where I was like, oh man, I don't even know about talking about this. This is going to this makes me nervous, but at the same time, I realized, well, that's where the good stuff is, right? Like if
Sure. Yeah.
we're just faking the shit, then what are we doing? So first off, I'll say I came across like thousands of other people. I came across you walking down the beach, just dropping some knowledge
Sure.
about being a people displeaser,
Yeah.
and my first defense mechanism was, even though I agreed with everything you said, I said, well, here's a guy with 400,000 followers talking about not being a people pleaser, and I wanted to discredit what you were saying. Right? I'm going to be honest with you, but the more I listened, the more I'm like, I get why people are listening in, especially when I heard you say, I'm not talking to everyone. What I'm saying is I'm talking to myself,
Yeah.
and that's why. All right, now I get why everyone in in the world of superficial crap that is social media, there's this vein of authenticity and rawness that is resonating with people, and it's coming from your mouth. So
That's quite a compliment. The channel
yeah.
came about by accident, frankly.
Well, and then I started hearing your story, and it's the missteps that have made the following that you have. It's made the reason your message is resonates is because, I mean, you come from some street cred of getting shit wrong. Right?
Dead wrong, yeah.
Yes. Just now that I've completely lost everyone that's listening, let's start off. Let's give a synopsis of your story. You know, the ups and downs. I love talking to people. I love talking to people that have lived on both sides of the habit spectrum. Right?
Sure.
Uh, let's talk about the side that was the people pleaser, that was the guy with the alcohol misuse issues or whatever we want to call it this week.
Sure.
Let's talk about that, and then
Just
we'll
call me
build.
being a drunk. Right?
Drunk. Yeah, let's just talk
drunk,
about it.
right?
Yeah.
By the way, I love the way you said that, because there's always, there's a new moniker for everything every single week with regard to like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and it's just an example of the linguistic treadmill.
Yeah.
Where, like, I don't know if you know this, but the word retard was not always offensive. In fact, it was the word that replaced a word that replaced a word that replaced a word.
All right.
And yeah, so if you look all the way back to the word retarded, and you go all the way back to the beginning. I digress, so forgive me if this is off topic, but then I'll tell you the story. If you go all the way back to the beginning, when before really modern medicine had decided what retardation was, they used to have what they called imbecile asylums.
That's offensive.
Right? It's really bad, right?
It's offensive. Yeah.
Right. Well, it wasn't then that was the word, right?
Right.
But as you and I are men, so we know how to make fun of people, right? And what I assume happened was some enterprising young man was out at a bar with his buddies one day, and he said, "What are you, an imbecile?" And then that slowly spun up the treadmill, and that's how that became pejorative. Was somebody said it in the pejorative, right? And
Right.
well, then they had to go from imbecile. It then went into morons. They had moron asylums. That's not a joke. That's a real thing. Like moron was written on
Right.
the wall. Moron asylums. Same deal. Some enterprising young man at a bar, probably 25 years old, said, "What are you, a moron?" and then that turned into, retarded, and then that turned into retard, then that turned into delayed. And I actually took it upon myself to say to my friends, "What are you, delayed?" And I'm the enterprising young man. So when that becomes offensive, then you can blame me.
We've almost come full circle, because I think it's way less offensive to call somebody an imbecile or a moron than
Right.
So it's almost we've come all the way around.
Right. I mean, can you imagine the moron asylum? That'd be so much more fun.
I want to go there. I think I've lived there in my own head so many times. So.
Yeah, I'd fit right in. So to answer your question, I guess we're going to tell my story a little bit.
I think it's relevant.
Probably relevant. So I didn't come from nowhere. I had what I remembered for many years to be a very good childhood, and at one point in my 20s, that turned out to not be true.
Mm.
And so when you bury the kinds of memories that I buried, it changes you, like on a fundamental kind of molecular level. And I haven't ever said it that way, so that's kind of a challenge for me right now, actually. But so I want you to imagine the worst thing you can think of your dad doing to you, and that's what happened, right? Mm-hmm. And through that timeline that I didn't remember, some things had kind of come to light in my family, and then I did remember, right? So I was 29 years old. I had one kid and another on the way, and my life completely fell apart, like completely. I mean, everything. I lost my house, I lost my wife, I lost my cars, everything. And that was a result of, kind of severe childhood trauma. I ended up in a mental institution for a bit of time, in a moron asylum.
I was going to leave it alone. I wasn't going to touch it.
Hey, listen, make the jokes. My girlfriend and I make them all the time. But so, I ended up in kind of a loony bin for a bit, suicidal and homicidal tendencies, and I was ready to kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
and when you go through that and you're 29 and you had emotionally immature parents, one of which was highly abusive and the other which was, emotionally immature and kind of, focused on her own thing, which is fine. My mom and I are good now, but that's just the reality of my childhood. And I had no coping skills for this. Like, I had no ability. I didn't know how to hit the ejection handle. I didn't know how to right the ship, right? So the best way I thought to do that was to drink a lot. So I did.
Yeah.
And right, and then, drinking, if you do that right, if you do drinking as a modality for numbing pain, if you do that well, that generally turns into use of any type of stimulant in addition to drinking, because then
Right.
you can't drink enough, otherwise then your party stops, and then
Yeah.
then drinking turned into cocaine, and that lasted for about, I don't know, about a year. And I got a little better. Right, I met my third wife. By the way, not great at getting. I'm great at getting married, not so great at staying that way. Anyway, I met my third wife, and
Uh-huh.
things slowed down a little bit. Right, but she and I met at a bar. Like, we met at a nightclub, so you know we kind of had a lifestyle that we enjoyed, and we continued that for a few years. And I'd kind of gotten better. I'd done some therapy. I'd done some healing, and I would say that I was probably teetering. I was kind of at the breaking point between two, relatively toxic extremes, and that was in 2016. And I had kind of gained some weight, and I wasn't in the best shape, and things weren't. It was a little dicey, right? But then my dad died,
Okay.
so then all of those wounds, like, just laid me
Yeah.
waste, and I went right off the fucking deep end, like right over the fucking falls, like Houdini, or the other guy, whatever, the Niagara Falls. Anyway, went over the falls, and the next thing I know, it's 6 months later. So he died in May. I was drinking a lot, like a lot. That kind of kicked me into a let's say 15 drinks a day kind of habit, and then that drink, that kind of, and then it just started leveling up, right? So it was 15 drinks a day, and 16, and then 17 was more.
Nick, I've heard you talking about being in sales, and you're obviously great at communicating. And I know we're going to get into the people pleasing part of that, but
Sure.
were you still holding a job? Were you at least on the surface successful
Sure.
to some portion of? Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, more so than probably I'd ever been.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's what I
So,
figured. That I mean, that's
right.
the reason I asked, right?
Right.
Like
So
it's
this is the weird part is, so I'd wanted to be an entrepreneur my whole life. I've been a coach since 2009, even when I was even when I was a drunken
that's
cokehead, I was a coach. So I've been coaching for a long time, and then during that time, from '09 until really, I guess, 15, I had kind of stayed in the coaching field, kind of in and out. I had launched two companies. One did well, one didn't. It was a great idea, just poorly executed, wrong people. It was kind of a misfit for my time in life. I needed to not be a drunk to make that work, actually.
yeah,
But I was a dating coach, and I did exceptionally well, and I managed to get rid of that company. And then in 2015, I had lost my job at a software sales company, not because I was a drunk, but because I was really good at it. Actually, I had figured out how to hack the system, and created a way that I could do my job in like 5 minutes every single day. And
that's a bad scenario for somebody with a drinking problem.
right. Well, it's a real bad scenario, but I made it work for 6 months. But what they were mad about was that my hours were low and my production was high.
Yeah,
Right? Because corporate America doesn't reward actual
work.
intellect. They only record, they reward grinding and whatever. So they ended up letting me go, and so I went to work. this was I went to work driving a bike bar. I don't know if you've ever seen a bike bar.
In
Yeah. So
Nashville.
yeah. Oh, you live in Nashville. Okay.
No. I've been to
Okay.
Nashville, and I've saw about 1,000 of those things. Yeah,
Yeah. So I used to drive one of those. So I got a job driving bike bars. It was a great job. It was a lot of fun.
sure.
But
I'm sure.
one can imagine, for somebody who likes to drink, this is a problem, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just for all weekend, and dude, I was making great money. I was making like $1,500 a week. So here I am making all this money, and it's all in cash. So that's the equivalent of making $2,000 a week,
Right.
and it was great, right? Well, fast forward to the end of the season, and I'd done pretty well, but I thought I could do better, and I managed to kind of weasel my way into this deal where I could buy a bike bar for myself.
Yeah.
With no money down.
Okay.
Right. So I bought one. and I started
Okay.
a competitive company in Denver to my old bosses.
Okay.
Well, I'm also not dumb, and I realized they had been in the business for a long time. So I invested. So I didn't have any money in the bike, except for I had to repair the hell out of it because it was brand spanking used, and it was in rough shape when it showed up. So I had to like paint it, and I had to do all this welding, and I had to rebuild it. It was an absolute disaster. Anyway, so I go through all this, and I took all the money that I had made, and I had pre-sold before it even showed up all these bike bar tours on Groupon.
Okay.
So I had like 5 weeks of revenue that was already built into this thing by the time it showed up. So I was under the gun when it got there. And of course, I'm drinking and I'm working and I'm drinking and I'm working and I'm drinking and I'm working. And I finally got on the road. Whatever. Well, anyway, I launched that company and I took all that money and I put it into advertising through Google and, you know, pay per click and all that stuff. And I just crushed everybody. Like I just decimated my competition. So much so that they were giving me referrals for sending business to them.
Wow.
So they were paying for my marketing at this point.
Amazing.
Right. So that ended up, I bought another bike and then I bought another bike and I had three of them. The company was doing like, I don't know, $750 a year, which is not bad for a little entertainment shop. That
Yeah. For riding around a bike with some booze. That's
right,
pretty good.
Right. For getting drunk all day long is not a bad game.
Right. That's right.
Anyway, so that company and I did pretty well for about 3 years, but so that happened in 15. And then 16, my old man dies. And once again, my life goes off the fucking rails. And I went to the bottle hard. Like, it was like booze and Coke. That's what we're doing. Like, that's how we're getting through the summer. Because he died in May. I had an entire summer of bike bars to run. Right. And that goes from like May until the end of October, every day, all day, 12 hours a day.
Do you even remember that period?
Loosely. I mean, not great. You know?
Yeah. I mean, even if you do, it's not I can't imagine it's a great.
No.
It would be. It seems like a really shitty.
I mean, it was a hell of
day.
a lot of fun. I'll admit that I had a lot of fun. You know, that was 16. You know, the day my dad died is also the day my marriage ended, which is interesting because of some things.
Jesus, Nick.
Yeah, so like she and I were at a club in New Orleans the day he passed away, and we were at a dance club, and or at a show. I think we were seeing who the hell we were seeing the Eagles of Death Metal. I don't know if you know who that is, but so we're seeing this band that she really liked. We had flown from Denver to go do it, you know, because I could afford to do shit like that. I was a pretty good husband. Anyhow, my dad dies, and I ended up so upset that they asked me to leave. They thought I was picking fights. I've been a martial artist my whole life, and they grabbed me by the shoulders and started dragging me, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing that.
Yeah.
And I was drunk, and I was sad, and I was mad. So I ended up in a fight with 5 bouncers, because they were dragging me away from my wife, and I didn't know what the hell was happening. And then, later that day, she says, "Well, you really ruined this trip for me," and I'm like, "Bummer." That's what we're going.
Dude, that's a hell of a day.
Right, that was a rough day. Anyway, so yeah, I was very successful in that endeavor. But that really kicked me into, we don't have to go through the whole story after that. It's like 16, 17, 18. I just drank for the whole time. It was brutal.
I've heard you talk about, there's a rock bottom, and then there's like, hey, I'm living in my mom's basement. I needed help. I ended up getting help, and you get sober.
Yeah.
And there's some ups and downs in that process. But everything that I hear you speak about, and going back to what I said in the beginning, the reason I believe it resonates with people is how raw and authentic it feels. Now, you've even said, I was coaching. I had a dating coaching thing. You're on your 3rd marriage at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're coaching during this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
What was that feeling like? And this is the only reason I'm asking you this, right? So, like I said, I've got this podcast called Consequence of Habit. I run a nonprofit called under the same title,
Sure.
and struggle at times when, and like I talk to some amazing people on here, if I'm not following through, and to be 100% honest, I just went through a period where man, I consider it, I relapsed. I didn't drink, but my
Right.
mindset, right? Like I know a very familiar feeling
Right.
of what that feels like, escaping, not wanting to, like, not being present, putting stuff out there that I know is not, it's not authentic. So I asked that question not to say, hey, I got you, probably more to go, were you feeling the same way I'm describing now when you were coaching these things, that, or could you compartmentalize? I know like I could tell you to do, if you do what I tell you to do, things are going to go great. That doesn't mean I need to follow them. I'm not talking about now, Nick. I
Sure.
honestly, I want to make sure I'm phrasing this in the correct way. Cause
Well, I'll make you a deal. How about this? If you piss me off, I'll tell you.
there we go. There we go.
Right.
The people displeaser. And I appreciate that because,
Yeah. Like just
that's not,
go nuts and swing for the fences. And if I get my feelings hurt, I'll let you know. But so to answer your question, there's really no answer because like my dating coaching practice was probably one of the most fun times of my life.
okay.
Like it was one of the most fun times I ever had in my life.
Yeah.
I was drunk a lot of that time.
Okay.
Right. I was also married a good chunk of that time.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So,
Fair enough.
but so alcohol. So if you take a people pleaser and you pour alcohol on top of them, what do you get?
You get a really confident people pleaser. I don't know.
Well, if you think of it like a cocktail. Okay, so let's say I take
Okay.
vodka and I take people pleasing. I put people pleasing in one of those shaker jars and I put some vodka on top of it. I shake it up. I can tell you the exact cocktail it gets you. It's a narcissist.
Okay. Well, there you go. You answered my question.
Right. So I believed I was doing everything right.
So I guess the real question was, when did you realize you weren't? And I guess I almost want to, I don't know if I can answer for you. Maybe that was when you went, I don't know if you did a 12-step, whatever process you went through.
Sure.
Um, because I hear brutal truth in what you say,
Right.
in like that podcast.
Well, the short answer to when did I realize that did I realize I was a fraud, or when did I realize I had a problem, or both?
Yeah, I guess yeah, I guess the problem would have to come first, or no?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't, so realistically, I think fraud is dictated by my inability to deliver what I say I was going to deliver. I always delivered what I said I was going to deliver. Right. I
Yeah.
said you were going to have fun on the bikes. You had fun on the bikes. I said you were going to get dates. You were going to get dates. Like I delivered. So I was never fraudulent in that. It's just that I was an imposter in my own life because I couldn't live the things that I was teaching.
That's just a better choice of a word.
Sure.
Yeah. Imposter.
Right. So I had created a character as a dating coach, which is what most dating coaches do, by the way. And if you look at the pickup artist world, if you look at Red Pill, you're seeing it's character. Like they're playing a role. And it's really good for somebody who doesn't want to be themselves. Right. And if you combine that with alcohol, what you get is kind of rampant, overwhelming narcissism. And that's what I was. Right. Well, in 2018, I was at a bar. Shout out to the Retro Room in Denver. They're still there. They're good friends. And it was 11 o'clock in the morning. I think it was April 16th or 17th. It would have been the 16th maybe, because I counted my first day sober was the 17th of April. And I'll never forget it. I had woken up next to somebody I love very much still to this day, who's a good friend of mine. And she had put her head on my chest. She could hear my heart beating. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm really sick." And I laughed. I said, "I guess I'll go to the bar."
Yeah.
And she was like me. We were both pretty sick. And that's what I did. And I went into the bar and I sat down and I ordered a burger and ordered my drink. And this was probably about 9:30. And at that point, I'm drinking double vodka sodas at 9 in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, right?
Right.
Double vodka soda with a Jameson back. So that's stout
Yeah.
cocktail for
You're,
9:30
you're
in the
going
morning.
you're going hard in the paint at that point.
Right. And I had a burger. I ordered a burger at 9:30 in the morning. And I'm sitting there. This is what I did every day. Like, this was my deal. Right? And there was this brief flicker, and I'll never forget it. It was like a flicker of light that kind of came through the windows to my right. And I don't know what caused it or where it came from, but it reminded me of like a flash, like a bomb going off. And I was looking at the bar. I saw the flicker. Something in my mind changed, and I went, "Oh shit, I'm gonna die here." Like,
You,
like it
you
just
knew.
like I'm dying, and really took me back. I was like, oh, "Okay, all right, we're okay." I kind of steadied my hand. I'm like, "All right, we're not dead, but we are dying. Is that what we're deciding to do? Like, is that the decision we're making? If we're making that decision today, let's just keep doing this, right? And it's
Right.
okay." At that point, it's like it's okay. Like, either way, if we're deciding to die, let's die. Right? Let's just take it. Let's just go out with a drink in our hand and a laugh with our friends. Let's just end it. Or do we need to live? And somehow my brain keeled up, came back online for 2 seconds. It's like, whoa, let's live. Live is good. Live was better, is what my brain said. And I was like, all right, I guess we're gonna live then. And I picked up the phone and I called my mom and I said, "Mom, I need you to sell everything I own. I need you to cancel my lease on my apartment, do whatever it takes to cancel it. Um, Move me into your second bedroom. I need you to drop me into a detox center today." And she said, "Okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes." Took her an hour, at which point I was like, so I had a few more drinks while I was waiting because I was
Yeah,
nervous.
you gotta get it in.
And
I mean, you
then,
don't have much time. You gotta hurry up.
and then I went to the bar next door, had another
Yeah.
burger, had 4 more shots. So when I checked into detox, I blew a 0.6.
Oof.
Or no, it was a 0.8. By the way, the legal drinking limit for driving an automobile is a 0.08.
Yeah, no, you were coming in full octane.
Right.
You were.
The doctor looked at me and he goes, "How are you even breathing?" I'm like, this is who I am now. It took me 4 days to blow zero to get out of there.
Wow.
So I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. That was one of the worst times of my life. That place like a jail. I don't recommend Denver detox, by the way. Not a Denver Health is not the place to go do that. Go to a hospital.
It's a
And then that put me in rehab. And then rehab is kind of when the journey really started.
what point in that rehab? I've heard you talking about doing work on yourself, right? And
Sure.
you've taken a lot of time to do that.
Yeah.
And this isn't about me, but my story wasn't quite. Everyone has their bottom.
Sure.
Right? Mine. I almost felt like half a drunk when I quit, because I would go and I would hear these stories of people that like their lives fucking imploded.
Yeah.
And I'm going, all right, well, I'm not that guy. Like,
Enough of a piece of shit to be in this room.
Yeah, that's right. I'm like, I drink too much, which makes me feel like crap. For some reason, I feel like crap in this room because I didn't drink enough. Like,
Right.
it's a weird dynamic, but you kind of you reach your rock bottom, and as you start to see things, the cause and effect, right?
Sure.
Without going into specifics, and then how that relates to people pleasing. At what point did you going through the 12 steps, whatever it was, were you like, oh wait, maybe this is the reason I do this? Not that it matters, and I've heard you talk about like before, like it doesn't fucking matter,
Right.
It, but at what point did you go, all right, I guess that was a reasonable response for what I went through. Now I got to do something about it.
2021.
Okay. At 6:45.
It was just, so what happened was in rehab, I'm a really good student and I'm a really good participant in group therapy. And I'm also a really good coach. I'm very talented at this. And I saw some gaps in the coverage at the rehab center as I was kind of exiting, and I said that to the ownership. It's like, hey, I see that there's some holes here I could plug.
Yeah.
You give me like a couple of days, I'll put together a proposal and I'll bring it back to you and kind of walk you through how I do that. She said, okay, great. I did that. And as I graduated from rehab and walked out the client door, I turned around and walked in the staff door. So I was like teaching in the rehab center the day after I left. And that, well, it's a terrible fucking idea, by the way.
Literally, like 2 guests ago, we had it's wow.
Oh, please.
It was just it's a story. Guy, Green Beret, amazing guy, right? I mean, when I say tip of the spear within the military world, like,
Sure.
People in the military that are at a high level look at this dude and like, holy crap, like this is break the glass and pull lever when things have really gone bad, and then this guy shows up,
Right.
and lost everything because of the same, the same thing.
Demons, yeah.
And is now working with the organization and seems to be doing amazing things. But so why do you say, for you, why is that a bad idea?
I didn't know how to do sober. I didn't know who I was.
There you go.
Right. Anybody who's newly sober knows that. Like, well, no, they don't know that, but they know that after about 3 years of being sober. That the first 3 years you don't know who the hell you are, and you don't find out, immediately. Like, if you look at the sobriety journey for most people, it starts in Alcoholics Anonymous, and if most of the time, if you stick with the program, you'll get there. Like, you'll get to a year, you get to 18 months. You'll hit some bumps along the way, potentially. You'll figure it out over time. But the reason that they give you those chips every year was actually, I don't know if you know this, but Napoleon was the first person to give away war medals. And he gave them away when people were making fun of him. They said, men don't care about trinkets. He said, I disagree, that men live for trinkets.
Yeah.
And toys, right? So the reason they give you those is because you're not finding who you are. You're just staying sober. You're just not doing a thing. And you need a constant thing to shoot for in order to get there. And that's part of why AA and I don't work well together anymore. It's because I don't see the value in the whole system. But to say all that is to say that I wasn't ready to take the responsibility for other people's sobriety. Whether it was their sobriety or mine, I wasn't ready for the responsibility of that. And it was my own hubris that got me the job. Right.
Your hubris is, do you think the same reason that I'm going to guess, because of sales, you're a great people, you were a good people pleaser.
Yeah.
Which means you're probably pretty freaking good at reading people.
Yeah. And I'm an exceptional liar.
Yeah.
That hurt a little.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Yeah. And the reason I reached out to you is like, I mean, there's parts of me. Yeah. You know your own. I mean, I could, for shit, in the first 10 seconds before we hit record, I could,
yeah.
I could talk to somebody for, yeah, I know I could talk. I'm like, here we go.
Right. Like this.
How much of this am I going to have to edit? I'm right. Joking, because we could go into some places. So sure. Yeah.
So what happened was in that arc of a story is I ended up in a relationship with somebody that's pretty toxic, because I was pretty toxic. She knows who she is, and I don't know, she'll probably never hear this, but we had one of those white hot romances, that you have when you're newly sober. Like, everything's great and you fuck better, and I'm good in bed anyway, and I was really good sober, and so we kind of went through that, and we lasted about 2.5 years. Broke up in January of 21. She thought I had been cheating on her. I hadn't, but I had. I'll say that I hadn't, and I had. But when I was drinking, there was no telling what I was going to do, and that's what we were doing together. Was drinking and doing coke.
Oh.
Yeah, like right off the fucking rails. It's like bam, down the tubes, right? And we became swingers too, which didn't help.
You're a wild dude.
Wait till you hear my book, dude. Wait till you see my book. It's ridiculous. But so we went to swingers parties, and we were in orgies, and we were doing blow and snorting coke off. She was blowing them off of dicks, and like a whole thing. It was just crazy, like just the wildest kind of shit that you could possibly imagine. And then that all ended in 2021. So I went through COVID, incidentally. So we had this kind of drinking binge for a year, and then we went through COVID totally sober.
You guys got it all wrong.
Yeah, we did it all wrong. Should drank that whole time. But so 21 rolls up. It's January 11th. Incidentally, I guess the 11th is a big day for me. That was anyhow, I got sober again on the beach here in Huntington Beach with there's an AA meeting at Tower 13, I think, Tower 11 here in Huntington Beach. Still there. It's a really good meeting. They're good people, but they got me sober that day, and I guess it was about then that I started to really question, like, what is this? Like, why am I struggling so fucking much to keep this on the rails? Like, what is the actual problem? I've been a coach long enough to ask myself the questions, like, what am I drinking about, rather than why do I drink? And that was a big question, like, what am I drinking about? And it was like, you hate your life. I'm like, why do I hate my life? I make a lot of money. Like, I had a nice house, I had a nice car, I bought an RV, I renovated it. Like, I had really cool stuff. My girlfriend was hot, and we were swingers, and like all the all the outward things. Like, I've got it. And I realized, I think all at once, that I had been living somebody else's life, right? And that really hurt, like, a lot.
Yeah,
like, it hurt really bad to realize that, like, I'd spent 41 years, trying to be something my dad would like,
yeah.
trying to be something that my mom would be proud of. And I never stopped and asked myself, what do I want? And, I went through this kind of 3-month period. Well, the first month of that kind of drinking, you know how that sobriety journey looks. The only thing I could do was roll out of bed and eat Sour Patch Kids. Like,
Right.
I was on COVID unemployment still, and I'm like, fuck, I'm going to die. I'm living in this terrible Airbnb in Orange County here in Huntington Beach. It's not terrible. It's just kind of a shack, and it's a mess, but it's our mess. And so it was March 16th, I think, 21. I got a bug up my ass. And I'd been sober for 2 months, 3 months, I guess. And I was sitting in my room. I was in tears. I was crying. I was on the phone with my now girlfriend, a friend of mine, and at the time, I said, I don't know what the fuck to do here. Like, I'm really lost, and I'm really sad, and I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I didn't even know if I wanted to be alive. And I booked a ticket. I got online and I said, what's open? Just Googled, like, what countries are open. And
Not hotels.
Right. And Costa Rica popped
countries.
up. Right. Costa Rica popped up. And I said, fuck it. I'll go to Costa Rica for a couple of weeks and I'll come back. Well, got to Costa Rica. And I didn't come back. I was gone for 2.5 years. I went and I just chased the opens, honestly. So it was like Costa Rica, then Mexico, then Panama, then Colombia, then Uruguay, and Argentina, and all these things. Finally, the last on the list ended up being Japan. And
you're sober this entire time?
No, God, no. So,
sorry.
No. So I did a year sober. I did a year fully, totally sober.
Okay.
On the day of my year anniversary, I had an itch that needed to be scratched, and I said, I think I'm okay, and I was, and that was interesting because I did something that most people in the alcoholic world don't think you can do, which is to go back. But I had spent a year, like, healing and talking and doing nothing but getting this out of my heart. Right.
Did you have any apprehension about, I guess you're being the people displeaser, but like putting that out there because you know these guidelines, right? You know how the rooms are about that kind of stuff. You're like, hey man, this is my life and this worked for me. As you know, getting sober or staying sober is a individual thing. And
it's really only until recently that I've been able to say it.
Listen, man, I was in a room and I told them that my daughter, she was at college and she was coming home, and I was like, I asked her, or my wife asked her something, hey, what meal would you like? And she's like, I want dad to make chicken marsala.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them that I bought a bottle of marsala wine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cooking it, and the vapor comes up, right?
Sure.
And the steam, and it hits you in the face, and it was even the process of opening the bottle.
Sure.
That seemed very familiar to me.
Sure.
And I thought that was the place to tell people that. right?
Yeah.
My experience, because it's supposed to be.
Oh
Oh,
boy.
I was dead freaking wrong,
Right.
man.
Vapor, you probably had to get a first aid chip.
No, yeah, right. That's right. I mean, this old guy I mean, he was pissed at me,
Sure.
and I mean, I guess I get it for him, and he didn't mean, he wants the best for me.
Sure.
I think I didn't know him, but that's the whole point of those rooms.
Sure.
So I could see that, I ask you that question because if I put myself in your shoes, I would feel, um, even if you were 100% work for you, just apprehensive because
God, yeah. So for years, for the first year after, so in 22, I wouldn't really talk about it. And you'll notice I don't call myself an alcoholic anymore. I call myself a recovered alcoholic. And the reason I call myself as recovered is because I've recovered, and I I'm never going to fault the rooms of AA. They helped me get where I got. Like they helped me come out of the darkness, and they gave me friends when nobody would give me friends, and they gave me love when nobody would give me love. And
yeah.
I get emotional talking about it. But um, the idea that everyone's sick forever is fucking toxic as shit. And
Yeah.
like, if it helps you to say that you're an alcoholic forever to keep you off the sauce, then do that. I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
But don't put that shit on me, because I've lived my life in a way that has been pretty awful. And I've seen some things that most people don't see. And it's not the worst of what humanity has to offer, by the way, the things I've seen.
That's right. Right.
And I've managed to heal those things. And to tell me that I have to do it your subscribed or, your predescribed or predetermined way in order for it to be valid is fucking horseshit.
The biggest part of it that I've come to realize recently, is the brutal honesty part.
Yeah.
Like that's its common thread. Like I don't care where you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part.
Yep,
right?
that part sucks, man.
Yeah. And what I appreciate about people going back, and you're talking to someone who hasn't been to a room in well over a year.
Sure.
Right. And then not doing the other work that I should be doing with the operating system that I have.
Right.
Is that, they're talking about things being cunning. You can trick yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Trick yourself into thinking you got it figured out. Or not even that you've got it figured out. You don't realize in real time that needle has fallen back into the groove.
Right. That's a great way to say that. That's a really great way to say that.
And that scares the shit out of me.
I think that, man, what a cool way to say that. The needle has fallen back into the groove. Never even occurred to me to think of it that way.
Here.
Oh boy, proud of you. The I keep a pretty close tab on it. As a kind of as an aside, I have watchers.
Yeah. Need them.
Yeah, I have people that are like, I think so. Dr. Robert Glover, I don't know if you know who he is. Wrote the book No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
Is a friend, and he and I talked about that. He's like, hey, make sure somebody has the tether on you. Like, tie a rope around your waist. Tell your friends, if you see this becoming a problem, tug that rope.
Yeah.
And I'll listen. Right. And that's how I've kind of done it. Is, even when I was going to drink again, I told the right people. Right.
Okay.
It was like, hey, I'm going to do this. I wasn't going to do AA anymore. I wasn't going to go back and start over.
Yeah.
I always laugh. They're like, you lost all that time. Like, where the fuck did it go? I feel like I still learned all those lessons. I don't know.
So I just hit 5 years, and everyone's like, wow, how does it feel? I'm like, I don't know. Right. It felt more, day 5 felt more powerful.
Yeah.
Like it's, so yeah, no, I get that. I get that part. Man, I just had a question that just.
Hey, by the way, for whatever it's worth, I don't know what your timeline looks like, but if we go over, that's fine with me. I'm not going to get mad at you. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
If you're not, like, if you're like, oh fuck, I need to get to all this,
No.
So that's really when it happened. is 21. And I started recording videos in May or June of 2021, and from that I ended up I think I did shit. I recorded a video every day from May until June, and then or May until probably September, and then I did 3 a day from September until December, and nothing was happening. Nothing was happening. And um, then December 3rd of 21, my first video hit, and it was off to the races. It's just been exponential. So well, I get 1% growth. Depending on the month, like 1 to 2%. That's a lot. 400K.
That's a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's big, right? Compound interest.
Right.
Like,
So it just
yeah,
keeps
those
doing
numbers.
that.
Hey, having done all of that work,
Mhm.
how do you describe your relationship, like as far as dopamine and the feedback you're getting from others with the social media? Again, I'm only asking this because it's something I've struggled with.
Well, it's 100% addictive.
Yeah.
And in your questionnaire, you actually asked, is there a habit that you're trying to work on right now? And incidentally, it's my social media habit.
Mine too.
Right. So
I honestly realize that I'm the same triggers. Like, yeah.
right.
And when I say I relapse, I just can't.
That's where you went to,
technology.
right? You went to social media because it's easy, and you're not getting drunk, so you're not turning into an asshole, but you're kind of turning into an asshole, and you're negating your own goals, and it's making you unhappy, and all those things, right? So it was actually this morning I started working on it. So I woke up. I've been struggling to sleep the last few days. It often happens around my birthday, which is April 8th. So just kind of struggling to get any rest, and I woke up this morning at 3:30. Normally, I would just be pissed off.
Yeah.
And like, fuck, I can't go back to sleep. I was mad. And today I was like, you know what? I'm going to use it. I'm just going to use it. And I got up and I made myself some coffee and I pet my cats and I read a little bit. I wrote my journal. It's one of my big things I do every day. And I ended up, being able to get out a piece of content. I wrote for my newsletter, and then I edited 2 pieces I wrote and recorded yesterday, and like I got a ton done between like 3 in the morning and 7:30, and then I'm like, well, shit, I'm still up, so let's go to the gym. And then I went to the gym, then I had a podcast, and then I took a nap, and now I'm here with you, and so I ended up using it. But normally, what I would have done was get up and just scrolled for 5 hours.
Dude, we're so insane.
Yeah,
we are insane.
Yeah, like I would have wasted an entire day laying on the couch scrolling in my underwear, right? Where what I decided to do today, and I wrote it, so I've been writing. This is something I've learned about habit. Maybe this is applicable to what we're talking about. Is if I write in my journal that I will or will not do something, I generally do it.
Same.
Right. So I wrote in my journal, I will not check my social media today, and I haven't. I just haven't, because my mind turns on like the minute I pick up my phone. I'm like, oh, you said you weren't going to do that. Right. One of the things I believe about confidence is really important in this. Like your habits dictate your confidence, because the more shit you do that you say you'll do defines how confident you become as a person.
It's the truth, man. Because the ability to sell things to well, you can put stuff out to the world,
Right.
and you can even convince the other world or the rest of the world. But I had Tyler Hamilton on. Tyler Hamilton was a professional cyclist. He raced with Lance Armstrong, right, on the team, and he talked about he had board meetings with himself at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what they put out to the world, no matter how much everyone believed him,
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I couldn't run from it. Right? Like it was haunting me,
right,
because I knew the truth. So yeah, and then going back to the social media, I honestly, I truly think this is an experiment happening in real time. And when we talk about what our baseline dopamine, and we can get into ADD and whether your thoughts on whether people with ADD just have a lower baseline of dopamine. It's one of the reasons we just like kind of chase things.
Sure,
they give us that, but yeah, I mean, it scares me. I I'll be in an airport, I'll look around, and I go, if there was a time machine, right? Somebody came back from don't have to go back that far.
Right.
85. They would think we lost our fucking minds. They would look around and go, "You've lost your minds."
Well, yeah. And so that's true. And if you look at how literature and art play out over time, you'll see that the rise of the zombie movie has come from social media.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody thinking anymore. It's part of the reason I love
No.
podcasting. And part of the reason I've thought about starting my own, but I'm on enough of them that I don't need to. But like, I've thought about starting a podcast because there's some real thinkers that I really respect. Um, Chris Williamson's one of those that I like. Chris, if you listen to this, hit a brother up. Like I want to be on your channel like here real soon. Help me launch this book. But like Ryan Holiday, people that are studying the Stoics, studying the old minds, and really understanding like we've been having these same problems all of humanity.
Listen, we like to think we're the smartest people because we happen to live in 2024.
Right.
I mean, Ryan Holiday's book, "The Obstacle is the Way," you're a perfect example of that exact thing. What stands in the way becomes the way.
Right.
Right.
And so, here I am 5 years after, 6 years, 7 years after first getting sober, and then 3 years after I did it again. And then, now I'm mostly sober. I live a soberish life. I don't drink very often, but when I do, I do. And I find joy in knowing that I figured out something. Wow, this is really going to hurt my feelings to say. I find joy in knowing that I found something in 2018 that not a lot of people figure out, which is the purpose and meaning of life is to die and to love. That's it. We are here to get our hearts broken.
And to love.
That's it. We're here to get our hearts broken.
It's the yin and the yang.
Right. We are here to love and to die. We're born to die. In that timeline, we get to love. That's the only thing that makes this experience worth doing. And then you see people, worshiping at the altars of, Jocko Willink and, even the Green Beret guy you were talking about. Like, I appreciate those people. I think they're very inspirational, but like 99.999% of people don't want to be those people. They think they do. Right? Who wouldn't want to be as tough as a Green Beret? Who wouldn't want to be as tough as a Navy SEAL, right? But like, I don't. I'll tell you why. Because I also recognize that to be that tough means you have to engage in your own psychopathy.
Yeah, and I think that was interesting conversation with Ben was talking about that is, we have an identity, right?
Right.
Especially as young men.
Right.
We know that our prefrontal cortex isn't developed till a certain age.
Right.
And there is something I've even heard you talk about the relationship of pain, and you were talking more about I believe an emotional pain, but the ability for someone to suffer and get through something. There is something that we find admirable in that, and there is a connection you get to others. It's like I would think that when you're at your rock bottom and somebody else is at their rock bottom,
right.
and you go through that process together, you don't even have to fucking like them.
No.
But you've gone through it with them,
right.
and you're going to feel a sense of connection. So what was interesting about his story was to hear all of that ripped away because of his own actions, and then how do you rebuild from that?
That is,
and that was
that is interesting to have that all taken from you. I can't imagine that. I can imagine a sort of pain that way, and that my life was kind of destroyed and everything I'd worked for taken away. But like that was his total identity.
16 years,
right? Like
16 years.
That was the whole life, right?
And you've watched
people die.
And you've watched. Yeah, that's right. You've watched your best friends die,
right?
And now this thing that you're part of is gone. And I thought it was just a fascinating conversation. But we're talking about you now, so let's not talk about Ben. But
so that was a really painful moment. I think just a moment ago was to recognize that what I just recognized was, I've been saying this for a long time. I've believed for a long time that the meaning of life. I used to say that love and adventure was all there is. But when you whittle down what is adventure, right? That's risking death. And when you whittle down love, there is no whittling down. Love is love. And I think that we're here to love people. I think we're here to love ourselves. I think we're here to engage in that agape whole, human love, whole world love. And, without sounding too hokey, like I'm going to break out the beads and start chanting,
If we
right?
do it,
We're also here to die.
Yeah.
And when you recognize your own mortality and then you recognize the gift of that mortality is love, it is pain. The gift is the pain. Then everything kind of falls into place.
It's beautifully said, man. Yeah. I think that's what scares me, not to keep harping on social media, is it tricks us into thinking that we got to feel good all the time.
Right. Well, yeah, you've got a whole generation of kids that think they're pieces of shit because they don't have Ferraris. I mean, I used to not be able to see what Tom Brady drove, right? I used to not know what house, Rogan lived in, but now I do, right? And you compare that to the life of the average everyday human, and they start to think that that's what they're supposed to be, and not everybody's supposed to be that. Right? There will always be people ahead of you. That's always going to be, and I do well. Like I do well for myself. I'm able to afford to live in California anyway, and that's a win. And
there's something to be said
right?
about that.
And relatively comforting is, or comfortably. So I don't have a yacht, and I drive a paid off Nissan Pathfinder. It's got a dent in the front fender, and I have a 2-bedroom apartment that I fucking adore. And I'm stone's throw from the beach, and I can walk there every day. And it's a simple life, but that simplicity is by design, right? And I think what we have is we've created, so most people are living by default anyway, right? Most people are living in this kind of, I hate to use the Tate references, but the kind of the matrix of what's real and what's not. And when I pulled myself out of that, when I unplugged from what does everybody else say I should have, what does everybody else have, and I asked myself what I wanted, Chris Williamson actually asked this question better than I do, which what would you want to want? And
I like that.
And when I asked myself what would I want to want, I came up with the idea that I would like peace and contentment in small and large doses based on need. I want to live in a warm place near a beach. And I want to experience the good things when I'm experiencing the good things. And remember what Kurt Vonnegut said, which is, when things are well, I beg of you to stop and murmur or exclaim at some point that if this isn't nice, I don't know what is. And that's it. That is the meaning of it all for me. Like, what would I want to want? It's like peace and contentment when I need it, and a pretty quiet, calm life with enough money that I don't have to worry about my family while I'm alive, because I'm dying with zero.
It's coming for us all, isn't it?
Yep, every single one of us. No one here gets out alive. Jim Morrison said that.
That's right. Nick, somebody wants to find out more about you. They liked what they hear in this. Potentially they want to work with you as a coach. Where do they find you?
Well, it's easy enough to find me, thepeopledispleaser.com, or my name, nickpollard.com. I'll point you at my website. You can book a call with me one-on-one there. The most effective thing you can do if you really want to know my thoughts is get on my mailing list. Both those pages will point you to that as well. But if you want to follow me on social media, that helps me a lot, at The People Displeaser on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or Facebook, provided TikTok's still around in a week anyway. Right, never know. So I'm easy to find at The People Displeaser. Just put that in, or if you just Google People Displeaser, you'll find me. I'm the only bald guy walking around the streets of Huntington Beach every day. If you want to come take a walk with me.
Listen, there's something to be said about, I'm going to guess, what are you, 43, 42, 43?
Yeah, 43.
There. Balding white guy walking down the beach and have captured the attention of a lot of people. And that's not by accident. So keep doing what you're doing.
I mean, I don't know if it's not by, it was by accident. It was legitimately by accident. But now it's, it's man, it's I'm really blessed. I really am. People stop me on the streets and stuff now, and they tell me that you'd be amazed at how many people tell me I got them sober. I mean, it boggles my mind. Literally, I mean, it's fantastic how many people tell me every day that I got them sober. It's 2 to 3 a day.
Is there any? Is that hard to take at first when you have people reach out, like specifically if people come and they've really dropped some heavy stuff on you, like, "Hey, what you said,"
Hmm.
and then fill in the blank.
I mean,
Is there a responsibility? I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but how did you take that at first?
Jordan Peterson talks about this. I didn't know what he meant at first when he said most people aren't real happy to see him. They're in pain,
I get it.
right? And he, uh, I've had people, I've had people reach out to me and say that they were in a tub ready to die, like in a bathtub about to kill themselves, and watching TikTok, and they got out because of what I've said. And it, it is scary to know that that kind of influence to know that I have that kind of influence is really scary. And then to know that there are others that have that kind of influence is also really scary. So like, be careful what you look for, kids. There's some bad folks out there on the internet. So
Yeah, there is. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know a million people reach out to you. It means a lot that matter of fact, we've gone over an hour now. Uh, I just appreciate everything you said and what you do. It's a breath of fresh air and you're using a platform like you've gone into the Death Star ship and are teaching the Force in a positive way.
well,
Like I don't know if that's a great analogy, but it's
I'm certainly trying.
uh,
I
yeah.
appreciate the compliment a lot. I love what you guys are doing. I think to quote your sign behind you there, our habits have massive consequence, and I don't know if enough people pay close enough attention to what is a habit